Hello, so in today's video, we're going to start by doing an exam question. So we've got the exams coming up very soon, in a few weeks' time. So in today's video, we're just going to do an exam question. The first question from the 2022 Pure Maths Paper 1 Edexcel exam. So if you're doing the Edexcel syllabus for A-level maths, then this would be a good video to watch. So we're going to answer the first question on this paper, so the 2022 paper, so last year's paper. This is we're recording this video right now in 2023, so this is last year's exam. I'm going to start with the first question here, so we're just going to answer this question today, and it's a question about graph transformations and transformations of a coordinate on a function which has undergone several transformations. So you've got this point -2, -5, and it lies on the curve with some equation y equals f of x. You've got some random function and this coordinate lies on this curve, where x is a real number, so we're using real numbers. Find the point to which P is mapped when the curve with the equation y equals f of x is transformed to the curve with the equation. So the first one is y equals f of x plus 2. So this is a translation upwards. This is a translation in the y direction by 2 units. So this is when you add 2 to the end of a function, you're just translating it. So this is a translation by a vector 0, 2. It's just adding the function upwards by 2, just shifting it up by 2. So for part A, if you're shifting a function up by 2, you're shifting the y coordinates up by 2. So this point P originally is -2, -5. If we're shifting the graph up, if we're shifting this point upwards, then I mean, let's just say you got a function like this. If you're shifting it upwards, you're not changing the y coordinates, so you're not changing the x coordinates, you're changing the y coordinates, you're increasing the y coordinates by 2. So the new point P is going to be -2 and -3. So you're adding 2 onto -5, and therefore you get -3. So -2, -3 for part A, that. Then part B, so we're going to now transform the graph so that we now have y equals the modulus of f of x. So the modulus of f of x just means we're taking the absolute value. So it means that if we get a graph, for example, like as an example, let's say you've got this graph here that does I don't know, something like this, then the modulus graph is going to look like this. So it's still going to be positive there. It's still going to have this positive shape there, but then it's going to reflect upwards like this. Sorry, let me try and draw that again, actually, just to make it clear that it's kind of like it's a sharp turn here. So it will be a sharp turn. So, sorry, my laptop is playing up a little bit. Sorry, 1 second. Come on. So annoying when you get technical difficulties in the middle of a stream. There we go. Yeah. So there we go. Yeah. So So what happens is that when you take the modulus of a number, the modulus of a number is never negative. It's always non-negative. So what happens here is that the graph just reflects upwards. You're taking the absolute value of these y values. So these negative y values reflect over your x-axis. So yeah, so what's going to happen then is, again, your coordinate's going to still have the same x value. That doesn't change. But what that means is that if you're taking the absolute value of your y value, so the modulus of -5, you get a +5. So your new coordinate there is going to be -2 and 5. So that's the first one. That's the second one. And then finally, the last one, part C. So y equals 3 times f of x minus 2 plus 2. So I've actually done a video on this, a video on graph transformations and the order in which we do graph transformations, because the order does matter. And with this one here, we've got several transformations. We've got this translation in the x direction, we've got this stretch in the y direction, and we've got this translation in the y direction. So remember the order in which we do things. We do the translation in the x direction first, we then do the stretch in the x direction, we then do the stretch in the y direction, and then the translation in the y direction. So the first thing that we do first, so step one, I'll just call it S1 for step one. So step one is that we do the translation in the x direction. So if you look at our translation, it's minus 2. So remember that if we have minus 2 in the brackets, like x minus 2 there, it means we actually shift it to the right by 2. So remember, it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive, but we did do this in the video that I've done on graph transformations, is that if you have a negative 2 in there, you actually shift it to the right by 2. And if it were to be a positive 2, you shift it to the left by 2 instead. In this case, we're going to shift it to the right. So there's a translation by 2, 0. So the coordinate, so the original coordinate was minus 2 and minus 5. So your coordinates after this first step is now going to go to, so add 2 to it. You're now going to get 0 and minus 5. So that's the first step. So then step 2, so we've done that. We've shifted it to the right by 2. So now then we're going to stretch it by a scale factor of 3. So, I mean, the next step would be to stretch it in the x direction, but I mean, there's no stretch there. It's just 1x there. There's just a coefficient of 1 there. So there's no stretch going on there. We're just keeping the x. We're not stretching in the x direction, this function. But we are stretching in the y direction. So the next step is to stretch in the y direction by a scale factor of 3. So I'll just call it a y stretch. So I'm going to do a y stretch by a scale factor of 3. So that means we multiply the y coordinate by 3. So we've got this 0, 5 there, sorry, 0 minus 5. We're going to stretch the y coordinate by 3. So we get 0 and then minus 15. So times that by 3, the negative 5 there. And then the last step is to now do the y translation. So to add 2 to it. So now we're going to add 2 to this y coordinate. So we're going to get 0 and minus 13. So your final answer will be this one here. So the point is going to be transformed onto 0 minus 13 for part C there. So yeah, that was just a brief question. The first question on the 2022 exam. So yeah, this was the 2022 exam. Paper 1, pure maths, and it was just going through this graph transformation question here. So just transforming this coordinate onto three different points after these transformations. So hopefully that video gives you a little bit of guidance with graph transformations. So in tomorrow's video, we'll just continue with more of this past paper and go through more of these questions tomorrow.